Michelle, do you mind just doing a quick roll call before I call the meeting to order?
Sure. Councillor Sweeney?
Here.
Councillor Davis?
Present.
Councillor Hennon?
Here.
Councillor Fury?
I am here.
Councillor Norton?
Here.
And Councillor Quinnell is absent.
Thank you, Michelle. With that, I will go ahead and call this April 19th, 2021 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Thank you for those attending tonight remotely via WebEx. I hope you don't run into technical problems. If you do, please reach out to Michelle Hauk and she can try to assist you remotely. With that said, as Michelle indicated, Steve Quinnell, or Councillor Quinnell, is excused from the meeting this evening. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would ask Rebecca, can you please lead us this evening? Well, I do not see Rebecca, and so let's go down the list. Greg, there you are.
Can you see me? Let's see.
We can hear you, so you can go ahead with the pledge.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rebecca. And yes, we can see you. Thanks for bringing the flag this evening. It's been for quite some time. Can't wait to get back to regular meetings, just for the record. With that said, we'll move on to communications from the public, and I'm going to ask Michelle Hauk to please coordinate communications this evening for those that have called in from the public. And just a reminder for the record, your name and address when you approach the council, please.
Okay, so if you're looking to speak towards the council at this time, please go ahead and raise your hand. You can do so by clicking the participants page button at the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Find your name, right click, and it should show a little hand icon. You can also, the three dots down to the bottom of the page, left to the red X. If you go ahead and hit that, you can go ahead and hit your hand icon. Sorry, somebody is feeding back on me, so I'm going to mute you. Scott, I'm going to mute you for a moment. Okay, thank you. And then also, if you're attending by phone, go ahead and hit *3 on your phone pad, and that will also raise your hand. We do see where Scott Shreeves would like to speak. So if you'd like to, Scott, go ahead and unmute your mic and state your name and address, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Scott Shreeves. I'm District Manager for Evergreen Disposal, Valley Recycling, and Bitterroot Disposal, Montana. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to speak tonight. I just wanted to share a little bit about Evergreen Disposal and our RFP response to the City of Whitefish recycling programs requested for curbside service and central recycling site. As you'll see, we submitted bids for both services, and we're here to assist in either of those services to make it a successful program for you for the City of Whitefish. I personally have been in the waste and recycling industry for over 36 years and managed buyback centers, curbside collection programs, drop-off sites since the 80s. I have a great team. We have a very skilled, knowledgeable team at Evergreen Disposal and within Waste Connections that we have resources that we can reach out to at any time. So we're pretty proud of that across the country. So, I believe we have been the low bidder for the central recycling site. So I wanted to share a little bit about the benefits of that program, if I may. We own our own MRF here in Kalispell, Valley Recycling. We currently source separate all the commodities in an effort to get the best value out of each of those materials. We currently recycle cardboard, newspaper, mixed paper, office shred, aluminum, plastics #1 and #2, which I believe we're the only ones in the county that do that for #1s and #2s. And we do that for all of our commercial and for public use throughout Flathead County. We currently have worked with the Flathead County to service all of their green box sites that they have recycling containers at for cardboard and newspaper and aluminum cans. In addition, we provide community recycling boxes for cardboard and newspaper at 2 locations here in Kalispell, which is Albertsons on Idaho and KME right behind Smith's on Idaho. And we provide service to those 3 days a week. These are just community drop-off boxes where the public comes in, drops off the material, we service it and manage that site on a daily basis and through the holidays. So we self-monitor those sites and without any assistance or direction or oversight. It's just a service that we offer the city, in the city. We know how to manage these sites through the holidays and eliminate any overflow through those circumstances that arise. We also submitted a bid for a similar recycling program with the city of Whitefish, and you may or may not recall back in 2017. And we were moving forward with Mr. Workman and the council to implement this program until the market crashed and that China ban came into place. And I just felt, and we coordinated together and felt it was just a media nightmare. It wasn't business-wise to continue on with that program at that time. So we're back, and we're hoping that we can work with you. And although we're the low bidder for the central site, we're here willing and able to help you out with the curbside program as well. If I could give a few more details on curbside program, that'd be great. Although the curbside programs are convenient, they tend to produce, a larger amount of contamination and service issues. And in the case of a mandatory program, not everyone's on board or wants to comply with those types of programs. As you're aware, you already have a couple of these curbside programs within the city of Whitefish through, I think it's Republic and Green, Montana. And I'm not sure what the participation rate is through that program, but that kind of shows you where everybody is. Maybe it's the cost that hinders them, but not everybody's really wanting to step on board with that type of program. I'm not discouraging it, I'm just trying to state out some facts that maybe the central site would be a better program to move forward with. Being a mandatory program, it comes with its glitches, and I've implemented mandatory programs over the years and had the pushbacks and the fights through those types of things. They are good and some good benefits for the city for reporting purposes and those types of things and to get more participation. But then there's people out there that they figure if they're paying for this service, they're going to use it, whether they use it for trash or extra bags, and they don't really care because they're not really bought into the whole program, in my opinion and what I've seen. They also attract wish recyclers, those people out there that want different commodities in the cans that don't belong or not in the program or something that we cannot get rid of. Say plastics, different types of plastics, or styrofoam or glass or those types of things that aren't in the program, but they feel if they just continue to put it in there that we'll see that we're getting a large quantity and that maybe we'll recycle it eventually by seeing the larger quantity, but it just continues to go in the trash because they're not aware of the programs that we have. Anyhow, either on either program, can be successful when you work together. And I've seen and worked with the city team, and together I know we can accomplish anything. So I thank you for the opportunity to work with the city of Whitefish and the time to speak.
Thanks very much, Scott. Look forward to working with you as well. Thanks for your interest in furthering our recycling efforts here in the city. It's been a long road, but we're optimistic working with you we'll be able to meet our goals. So thanks again. Michelle.
Okay, so the next person in line, your phone number ends in 06. If you'd like to unmute your phone, please state your name and address. The phone number that ends with 06, it does not show me the rest of it. It says 4062 and then the last is 06. If you'd like to speak, please unmute your phone by *3. Or no, *6.
Hello?
There you go.
Melissa Hartman, 436 Park Avenue, Whitefish.
Thanks, Melissa. Yes.
Okay. Well, I just thought since we are hopefully reaching the tail end of the COVID craziness. I know I'm sure that it's not fully over, but I'm hoping there's some bandwidth for the council to take up the resolution to support the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And hopefully get that on the agenda for a vote in the near future. Again, I think it would be a wonderful piece of legislation for the city to support. It aligns with the goals of the Climate Action Plan and seeks to significantly reduce the impact of carbon and fossil fuels. So it was just reintroduced to Congress on April 1st. So it's making the rounds back through Congress, and hopefully this year we'll actually be able to see it get passed. Numerous cities have already signed on and support, so I'm just hoping that Whitefish can follow suit, especially given our dependence on good snow in the winter and hopefully minimal fires in the summer. Also be great to follow the resolution with a letter to our congressman encouraging his support. And that's all I wanted to say, other than I'm happy to recirculate and send back out. I know I'd given a packet to council members, but I'm happy to send out something that's updated so that everybody can kind of take a look. And that's all. Thanks so much.
I'd appreciate that if you could follow up, Melissa. I know that you sent us some information months and months ago, I think even pre-COVID, and it's just been fairly nuts here at the city. But if you could follow up now that we might have a little bit of breathing room after we get the budget adopted and our goals adopted, I'd be happy to take a look at that and see what we can do to shepherd it along in conjunction with the Climate Action Committee.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the phone number that ends with 21, 4067, and then 21 is the last. You can go ahead and unmute your mic and state your name and address, please.
Good evening. This is Mary Flowers, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Citizens for a Better Flathead. Our main office is in Kalispell. And I wanted to speak to the recycling contract and program that you have on your agenda for discussion later this evening. I want to applaud the city for continuing to work to put in place a program that allows you to expand collection and to do so in a way that reduces the contamination that plagues most recycling programs. I do want to say that whether you go with the curbside option or the central pickup location, both of those functionally can be, you can hire someone to do that work, but the most critical part of the decision in front of you is how you hold the individual contractor accountable to really make sure that the materials are collected and do get taken to a center that can turn those materials into new products out of the recycled material. We will be hosting an Earth Day event on Thursday evening to discuss the movie, The Story of Plastic. And for those of you who are familiar with that or some of the other documentaries that have come out on plastic, one of the real travesties is that so much of that material that is collected is being shipped overseas and never does get recycled properly. I think, as was mentioned earlier, the only place right now that we've been able to document that is getting that plastic to a place where it is going to be recycled is the program through Valley Recycling. And I wished I could share with you some pictures of the materials in those bins, but they are so well sorted and separated that it makes them a much higher value commodity than, unfortunately, the mix of plastics we're seeing in the Whitefish recycling program. And so accountability in the language of the bid, and really, while I recognize that you will have criteria in deciding how to move forward, I would really encourage you to place strong emphasis on the reporting ability and the accountability that is included in the bids before you. And I would also point out that even details like in your bid language, it would be good in the final contracts to make sure that, unlike the bid form, which says services include the collection and disposal of commingled flattened cardboard, paperboard, aluminum, etc. I think it's really important to emphasize that services include the collection and recycling of these materials. Again, I know that the intent of these bids is for recycling, but I think in the long run, giving much more attention to that issue is going to serve the city well. I would say that if you do go with the single site for collection, I certainly hope that you can work through the Waste Not Project. We have worked very diligently to make sure that countywide we have materials sorted the same anywhere you go in the county. And right now, the program in Whitefish is a little bit different. And so we'd like to see that coordination moving forward so that all sites collect the same materials in the same bins, consistent with all services in the county. It's a difficult decision before you, and I really hope that you will provide some opportunity for public comment through some forums as you move forward for this decision. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mary.
Okay, Chad Bauer, if you'd like to unmute your mic, state your name and address, please.
Thanks, Michelle. Chad Bauer with Republic Services, and it's 1501 Rogers Street in Missoula, Montana. Mr. Mayor and councilman members, thank you as well for allowing us to be a part of the RFP process on the recycling. And I will not reiterate what Mr. Shreeves said in regards to the recycling and what can be done. We are the current provider at the convenience side of Whitefish right now, and have thoroughly enjoyed the relationship. We also are more than happy to work with the city in whatever direction you choose, whether it is a convenience site or the curbside option. I will disagree a little bit with Mr. Shreeves with the education and outreach program. We have found, and we do these programs all over the United States, that our contamination rate in our recycling programs is less than 5%.
Hey, Chad, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you're breaking up just a little bit on my end. If you don't mind, I'm speaking maybe directly into the mic or a little louder would be great.
Yes, is that any better?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to say that a curbside program does work. It works well in communities, but so does the convenience site. And I do think that, you know, the council has a very interesting situation to look at as far as which direction do you go with this process. And I just want to let you know that we're here to help in any way that we can moving forward. And I will be available for questions when we get to it on your agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, and John Hilton, if you'd like to unmute your mic and state your name and address, please.
Okay, my name is John Hilton, owner of Helena Recycling. Address is 3 Industry Loop, East Helena, Montana. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I will keep this brief as I was fairly detailed in the proposal that we presented on March 4th. For clarification purposes, Helena Recycling bid on this project as a whole, so we didn't bid out separately. We did this because we wanted a long-term recycling partnership with the city of Whitefish. Please note that when we bid this project, we projected between a 60 and 70% participation rate by year 3 in the curbside program. Therefore, the higher rate. This is the mandatory curbside and a new recycling center to process the materials. Our proposed recycling center would bale, ship the single stream, and we wouldn't have to rely on a subcontractor to process this single stream recycling. Also, we wanted to give the businesses in Whitefish the opportunity to recycle as well with the drop-off location at the recycling center. In close, I just wanted to reiterate that Helena Recycling's proposal is a long-term solution for recycling in Whitefish. Currently my company does a source separated. Yes, that is clean material, and it all is recycled at the respective mills that we ship to. Single stream, yeah, is a little different animal. There are avenues for single stream recycling to get sorted properly, but it's all about education. And just like Chad had said, education is a big key to this. So thank you for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions during this process. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Okay, John, and there was one that was sent in by written comment from Toby Scott. He stated, this is in regards to Spokane Avenue entrance to Whitefish. When will the city see some improvement of the Spokane Avenue between 10th Street and 2nd Street? This is the entrance to our city and one of our worst roads. I believe it is considered part of Highway 93 and therefore not under the repair jurisdiction of the city, but we should be voicing some outrage at it to the Montana Department of Transportation. What is being done to remedy this miserable gateway to Whitefish? And other than that, I don't see any other hands that are raised for anybody to speak towards the council.
Thank you, Michelle, and thanks for those that showed up tonight to provide comments to the council. Real quickly, Michelle, are there any volunteer board reports from those that phoned in tonight that you're seeing?
If we do, please raise your hand and or send a chat.
Okay, not seeing any. I'll turn it over to the council. Any volunteer board reports from the council, you can simply raise your hand and launch into it.
John,
Rebecca.
this is Frank. On the park board, one of the things that was most interesting this time is that we were brought essentially a proposal from Whitefish Kids Sports or Whitefish Sports, whatever it is, to allow for the music school to effectively lease or a portion of that park for a music school. And that's going to be coming to us in a formal proposal, probably, and with the park board's recommendation, probably sometime in the next couple of months. And that's just kind of foreshadowing what we'll be getting. And I think it's from my perspective, based on what I heard, it was a very good proposal and shows a true partnership between kids sports and the city and the music school, which I think is a great thing.
Thanks, Frank. Additional volunteer board reports from the council.
I'd like to say one thing about the tree committee. We did walk along Edgewood and talk to different owners about their projects. I kind of realized afterwards I'd kind of promised a lot of landscaping. So I did debrief with Bruce Booty, but the whole road is being moved, and I think a lot of the residents, when they bought their properties, didn't realize that the road was going to take away half of their front yards. And so I'm bringing this up in case there's other neighbors that wanted to approach the public works people and the tree committee about designs on their own property, because there's going to be some professional landscaping available to decrease the impact a little bit. So it was a good, I love trees, and so I want the residents to be really happy with the outcome of what that program using resort tax dollars does with their property, but it will be a big change for that whole neighborhood. So just wanted to bring it up in case anybody else wanted help.
Thanks, Rebecca. Appreciate that. Further board reports from the council? Not seeing any. I'll move on to the consent agenda. You have the minutes from April 5th enclosed with the packet. Any changes or additions to the minutes from the regular meeting? Not additions, just edits, please. Corrections. Or can I have a motion for approval?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Frank. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hennon. Thank you very much. Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Sweeney?
In favor.
Councilor Davis?
In favor.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
And Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. We'll move on quickly to our two public hearings this evening. We'll start with item 6A of the agenda, which will be resolution 21-12, if I'm not mistaken, a resolution establishing a parking permit pilot program and setting the fees for parking permits. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Michelle Hauk. She will present her staff report, which is presented or also included in the packet. Thanks, Michelle.
Unmute before I share so I can see where I'm going. I'm going to share that one more time, just a moment. Alrighty, can you all see that now?
Yes, we can see your screen, Michelle.
Thank you. Alrighty. So thank you, Mayor, Council. The City Council adopted the Whitefish Parking Management Plan on October 21st, 2019. The management plan serves as a foundation for establishing a sustainable parking program and to better manage the existing parking facilities. The demand for increased all-day employee parking options is called out in the management plan. Employees and business owners in the downtown corridor repark and shuffle their vehicles to avoid an overtime parking citation. The management plan recommends the city create a parking permit program for the downtown area and establish a committee to implement the program. The City Council created the Parking Permit Implementation Committee to provide suggestions and feedback with respect to a pilot parking permit program. The committee consisting of Chris Schustrom, Chair, Josh Brandstetter, Michelle Hauk, Hillary Lind, Mike Rossi, Tyler Ferry, Leslie Hunt, and Jeremy Grossman. They have all worked, they've met several times to discuss the pilot program. The downtown corridor has a mixture of unlimited on-street parking, limited 2-hour on-street parking, and limited 3-hour parking in surface lots and the ground level of the parking structure. The second level of the parking structure provides covered lease spaces for $40 per month, and the third level provides uncovered lease spaces for $30 per month. The committee recognizes the importance of alleviating the need for employees and business owners to leave work to move cars in order to avoid a parking ticket, to keep on-street parking open for customers of downtown businesses, decrease the impacts of downtown that currently allow for unlimited parking, keep the costs to the city of implementing the pilot program to a minimum, and to collect useful data from the pilot program to form future parking management decisions. On March 15, 2021, the committee and the City Council held a work session based on the committee members' experience with downtown parking, recommended an affordable and flexible parking permit pilot program. The pilot program will run for 2 months during the peak season, July 1st, 2021 through August 31st, 2021. The cost is $20 per month, which is the same as a parking ticket. Only one license plate is valid per permit. Permitted parking is allowed in the surface slots located at 3rd Street and Central Avenue, which I'll minimize this, sorry. So 3rd Street and Central Avenue, 1st Street and Spokane Avenue, and this lot south of the Whitefish Community Library, and on the 3rd level of the parking garage, which is also the uncovered parking. Parking permits for the pilot program are valid in any of the designated surface lots or the 3rd level of the parking structure on a first-come, first-served basis. I want to thank the Parking Permit Implementation Committee for their time and dedication in creating this program and for their help with education and outreach to the employees in the downtown area. There's no additional cost to the city. And with that, staff respectfully recommends that the City Council approve the proposed resolution number 21-12, a resolution establishing a parking permit pilot program and setting the fee for parking permits. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Thanks, Michelle. We'll start with the council. Any questions for Michelle and her staff report? I'll start with Frank.
No additional questions.
Thank you, Frank. Councilor Fury.
No questions at this time.
Thank you, Frank. Councilor Norton.
None for me, thank you.
Councilor Davis.
No questions from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. And Councilor Hennon.
No questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. We did advertise for a public hearing on resolution 21-1, 2, or 12, and we'll hold that public hearing now. Please, for the record, your name and address when you approach the council, and I'll let Michelle coordinate the public comments this evening.
Okay, so if you are interested speaking towards this item, please raise your hand by finding your name in the participants page and clicking on the hand icon, or the three dots to the left of the X at the bottom of your screen, or *3 on your phone. While we're waiting for that, I did receive a few written comments that was forwarded onto the council. Would you like me to read those out loud, John?
I think they're brief enough that you can just read them briefly. Yes.
Okay. So Toby Scott, he did write in, permit parking is a good idea, but charging $20 a month for a parking place is at the expense of the workers we are trying to help. I feel that a lower rate for verified workers in downtown with a supplemental fee to the businesses employing those workers would make it more just. He also mentioned adding a multi-story parking structure on East First Street and Spokane Avenue, which has always been something that we've been looking into. Whitney Brine with Fleur Bake Shop. She's writing to address, she supports the parking permit pilot program for the coming July and August 2021. This would be hugely beneficial, not only for convenient downtown parking access for her staff, but to all employees who work in the downtown area. Finding available parking downtown in the busy months when trying to get to work has become a headache to many. She hopes to see this program pass for the summer. And Diane Carter, she wrote in saying she feels employees and business owners do not need to pay anything. They are helping to create an income for the city by serving the customers that will be paying these fees. Our businesses are still getting their feet under them from COVID. In order to save the fees, some people will park in adjoining neighborhoods which already have crowded parking. And that's the last of the written comments. We did receive something from the library regarding the history of the parking, which will be forwarded to the council. That came in at 6:37 tonight. So that was after comment was closed out for written comment. And as far as people on the meeting, it does not look like anybody would like to speak towards this agenda item.
Great, thanks, Michelle. I'll go ahead and close the public comment period. Thanks for the staff report. I do have a question for Angie. This letter that we received from the Library Board of Trustees just literally an hour ago. Do you have any comments, or have you had an opportunity to review that letter? I should first ask that.
John, I haven't. I'm sorry.
Well, it came in late. That's certainly not your fault. It came in at a mere 37 minutes before our regular meeting, and this has been advertised for quite some time and appeared in a work session in our meeting prior. So thank you. Council, I prefer if we start with a motion and we can proceed with discussions from there.
I'll make a motion to approve, I'm sorry, is it 21-12? Resolution -21-12, establishing a parking permit pilot program and setting the fee for parking permits.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
And that was seconded by Councilor Fury. Rebecca, would you like to speak to your motion?
I really appreciate the committee working on this. It's a pilot program, so we're hoping to get data from this to see if designated areas will work. Also, we would like a lot of input from the people that will use the pilot program on the cost of it, as well, if it's a hardship or not. Businesses could also give feedback for that. But did Chris say we have over 540 employees downtown? Something like that is what I remember from the work session. And so we really want to give them more surety about where they can leave their cars and not have to worry about leaving their work premises over and over, and also open up space for visitors. So it's a start, but we do need feedback. So I'm really happy that we're doing it, especially since we're anticipating a busy summer. That's all.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further comments from the council? Michelle, roll call please on the motion for approval.
Councillor Sweeney,
In favor.
Councillor Davis,
In favor.
Councillor Hennon,
In favor.
Councillor Fury,
In favor.
Councillor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
And that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Michelle, for your work on this committee, as well as our chairperson, Chris Schustrom. Thanks very much, as always, Chris. I appreciate your volunteerism yet once again. With that said, we'll move on to item 6B of our agenda, which is Ordinance 21-5, an ordinance amending Title 9 of our fire regulations, Chapter 1, Fire Prevention, Section 6, Fireworks of the Whitefish City Code, and this will be on a first reading, and I'll turn it over to our city attorney, Angie Jacobs, for a presentation of her stock report. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My staff report begins on page 54. Fireworks have always been a big topic in Whitefish, and we began regulating the sale and discharge within city limits in late 2002. That ordinance has been amended twice, I believe, up until now. So our current ordinance allows the sale of fireworks within our limits only between the hours of noon and 8 p.m. from July 2nd to July 4th. To the best of my knowledge, at least in the time that I've been here, no one actually sells fireworks within city limits because I don't think it would be a big money maker because it's so limited. It allows individuals to discharge fireworks only between the hours 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. on July 3rd and July 4th. It also prohibits individuals from discharging fireworks in parks and public right-of-ways. And it grants the city the power to issue permits for supervised public displays. And finally, it provides penalties for its violation in the amount of $300 for a first offense and $500 for a subsequent offense. I think we're all aware that over the years, we have heard numerous people express concerns regarding the use of fireworks. Many concerns, I think, have arisen because of the use of these concussive fireworks in public displays over Whitefish Lake. You know, those big bangs really travel over that water pretty well. Other concerns have been raised even with the smaller fireworks, you know, pets, they scare pets, people with PTSD can suffer as well. And finally, debris from people setting off fireworks has been a concern. It's also, I think, really hard for our police officers during the 4th of July holiday to monitor the use. They have their hands full, usually with visitors during that time. Additionally, significant concern has been raised regarding water quality within Whitefish Lake. Most fireworks contain I can't even say that, but a chemical compound that can be toxic, and it's very water soluble. In early 2019, the Whitefish Lake Institute published a white paper and urged the city and the Chamber of Commerce to consider replacing a portion of the fireworks used in their public displays with non-percolate ones, and to eventually phase out percolate fireworks to a 50% level. I did provide a copy of that study in my materials. So we've discussed fireworks on and off over the years. We had a work session in early March of 2019. At that time, several members of the public did attend and urged the council to ban the use of fireworks. There are other members of the public, however, that also really didn't want the council to completely ban fireworks. So at that time, most of the council members indicated they were interested in continuing to allow these smaller kind of consumer type fireworks that aren't the big bang fireworks, and that they were perhaps interested in expanding the hours at which people can light them off, just because As we know, it doesn't even get dark at 10 during July. So at the end of the work session, you asked staff to work with law enforcement, the fire marshal, and 2 council members to draft some proposed amendments to our ordinance. I did so over the next year. We were going to bring this, or I was going to bring this to you in March of last year, but unfortunately COVID-19 hit and we were only holding essential meetings on essential items. And I think at that point, kind of council direction was this is not an essential item. So the proposed ordinance is actually based upon Bozeman's ordinance. It allows the city manager and fire marshal to review permits for public displays, which have to be submitted 15 days in advance. It also allows them to condition public displays. So for instance, in not allowing the Big Bang fireworks or, placing some time limitations, it sets some pretty stringent requirements for public displays, including insurance, a site plan, a safety plan. It kind of just fleshes out the old ordinance. It requires operators of public displays to replace fireworks with low or non-percolate fireworks in accordance with the schedule suggested by the Whitefish Lake Institute in their white paper. It prohibits the sale of fireworks within city limits, but again, this has never really been a huge issue. It allows certain consumer fireworks, which are the kind of smaller fireworks, to be discharged on paved city streets that are not arterial streets or collector streets. And I actually had a conversation with Travis, our fire marshal, about that. He said he'd feel more comfortable with people discharging them on the street because private property often is very treed and the fire risk is greater. It allows them between 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. on July 3rd and between 11 a.m. and 12 a.m. on July 4th and 5th. It prohibits the discharge in parks within 1,000 feet of a hospital, nursing home, or assisted living facility, and within 300 feet of a gas station. It requires individuals who discharge fireworks to clean up the debris created, and it increases the penalty for violation to $500 for a first offense. And it also holds the members or officers of entities that violate it personally responsible. We've had some entities do public displays, and how do you hold them liable? That's kind of always been an issue. So there are really no financial requirements or impacts associated with this. I will say non-percolate fireworks are traditionally more expensive, so I guess council should be aware of that. And with that said, I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Angie. We'll return to the council. Frank, any questions or comments on the staff report?
Yeah, Angie, it appears that through this ordinance, we're essentially extending by a day, or are we just simply moving? In other words, historically, we've only allowed them to be discharged on the 3rd and the 4th. Under this, we're allowing them to be discharged 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
Yeah, that's correct.
I hate to ask a silly question. Why did we decide to add the 5th?
I don't know why we decided to add the 5th, Frank, because I don't think it's a silly question. I don't know if we did that. I based it off Bozeman's, and that's probably why it was still in there. But when you and I and Andy worked on this, I don't know why the 5th is still in there.
Angie, the 5th is if there's a rain date on the 4th, they like to move it back one day. If you have that in the law and then the weather changes, it's hard to make the proper adjustments.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Councilor Fury, any questions or comments?
Just one quick comment, I guess. And the mayor received this email too. We both got an email, and this is from Whitefish Lake Institute, and I'm a little concerned on the non-perchlorate product. Presumably, there's really only a limited number of factories that produce those products in the world, and the biggest one has been purchased by Disneyland and Disney World because they do fireworks every night all over the world. And I guess they're not really available, not necessarily just expensive. So that's something we may have to think about a little bit. I know Kevin Gartland had talked with Mike Koopel, and said that their distributor has absolutely, no avenue to get those. So I'm not quite sure what we would do with that in the event that we just can't get them here in the next couple of years. I'm guessing that, other factories will probably step up, and so I don't know. I mean, do we have any wiggle room in that? I guess, Angie, would be my question.
Yeah, I think we can do. I mean, I think what we could do, Andy. Sorry, I'm just getting to it. I mean, we could set it on a less aggressive schedule than that suggested by WLI. And yeah, I'm aware that there is limited availability. They're expensive and they're not as sparkly. So, but maybe we phase them out. Maybe we phase it down to a 50% over 10 years. Or maybe we don't, maybe we only phase it to 40 or 30. I think that's definitely something we could talk about. I know WLI's schedule was a pretty aggressive schedule.
Yeah, and Mike did state today that the Institute would be willing to help the chamber and the city, obviously, and coming up with some solutions. So, and there's help out there for us. I just would hate to see us. They can't get the 10% this first year, and then we go, oh, we can't have them because we can't do the 10%. So that, I think, as much as I want to see that happen, I want to leave us a little bit of room, I guess.
Andy, and I think what else I could do is I could just modify that position or that section and include language, if available or something like that. Or we could extend the schedule, whatever you guys want to do. I think we have wiggle room.
Okay, thank you. No other questions, John.
Yeah, to Andy's point, Kevin Gartland had a hard time getting on this evening. I've actually had a few folks reach out to me indicating they can't log in remotely, Kevin being one of them. He did comment regarding the fireworks that he spoke with Mike Koppel today and said that eco-friendly fireworks, as far as he can tell, are not available pretty much anywhere on the open market as far as he can tell. The only reference he could find online refers to experimental prototypes, but nothing that's actually in production. His pyro contractor also called all of his sources this afternoon, and none of them have a supplier who carries, non-perchlorate products. And he goes, if we can acquire them, we'd be happy to pay the extra cost, but if not, there's no way for the chamber, the sponsor of the annual event, to meet the 10% eco-friendly goal this year. So I'll just share that comment from Kevin with the council. Councilor Norton, comments or questions?
Yep. I remember this discussion before we even built the city hall when we were over near the wave. And Mike brought it up at that point because he had a baby. And he said he would not let his child swim at City Beach for 2 full weeks after our fireworks display because of the neurotoxins released. And I was shocked that that's what happens to our lake every time we have one of these displays. So I think it's okay to put a clause in there that says, unless there's absolutely no availability, but I think it should be a goal of our city to stick to a strict schedule for that, because I think most parents would not want their children swimming in something that has residue like that. I remember it because it was so surprising, because he's such a mild-mannered person and always diplomatic, and remember him being really alarmed about it. And so it's taken us this long to actually make this recommendation law. So the only other question I had is it the chamber that's paying for this? We don't contribute anymore, do we, as a city, for the costs of the fireworks?
We don't.
I thought it was Whitefish Shines. So no, I think it's good. I personally would rather we didn't have the 5th included, because I think by the time the 4th is over, we're all kind of tired of loud noises. And I do think those really loud cannon sounds that people around the lake complained about the last year after a wedding, if we could avoid those, would be good. But That's all. I'm glad that we're doing it before the 4th, since it looks like we might be able to celebrate this year. So thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Councilor Davis.
No questions. I would just make a comment that I also would support an amendment that allows for some flexibility in the event there's supply or other cost issues that would make the target goal unattainable.
Okay, thanks, Ben. And finally, Councilor Hennan.
No questions, but I would be on board with that amendment as well.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be our own ordinance 21-5, and we will hold that public comment period now. And I'll turn it back to Michelle to manage public comment. Just for the record, your name and address, please, when you approach the council.
Okay, so if you're interested to speak towards this, please raise your hand on the participants list to the right of your screen, or the 3 dots to the bottom, the left side of the red X at the bottom of your screen, or *3 on your phone. While we wait for those folks, I did receive a couple written comments via email. Would you like, or 1 by email and then 2 by phone? Would you like me to read those? Okay.
Yes, please.
So Toby Scott wrote in again regarding the fireworks regulations. He did mention the same thing. From the description in the Interlake today, the restrictions and regulations seem within reason. I question the declaration of the danger by the perchlorates. Same way with you, Angie, I can't say it, contained in the fireworks. I agree we should be aware of these dangers and follow prudent precautions. However, I would like to have you review the dangers based on science regarding A, the parts per million that present a danger, and B, the amount to generate that amount per million in a given amount of fireworks set off. All this in relation to the water volume of Whitefish Lake. Continue the regulations, but bear in mind the actual danger presented by the ingredients in the fireworks. Also bear in mind the number of residents living on the lakefront and their voice is in relation to the population of the city. The few should not dictate the rules of the majority. And then the phone messages, one was from Carol Treeweiler. She supports the ordinance restricting fireworks. This has been an ongoing problem with neighbors and influx of visitors. She would like to see more restriction of not allowing discharging within city limits. And an anonymous caller, she supports the firework ordinance, but would like to see more restrictions on not allowing discharging within city limits, especially the wild fireworks. She has had a problem with her neighbor for many years. And with that, I don't see anybody else who'd like to speak towards this agenda item.
Thanks, Michelle. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on item 6B of the agenda and turn it back to the council. And let's start with a motion one way or another, and we'll continue with discussion.
I would make a motion, Mr. Mayor, and then I would have an amendment to that motion if I get a second. I would move that we approve ordinance on a first reading number 21-05, I believe we are, and that will be an ordinance amending Title IX Fire Regulations, Chapter 1 Fire Prevention, Section 6 Fireworks of the Whitefish City Code.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
I'll second.
Oh.
That motion was seconded by Councilor Norton. I'll turn it back to Andy. Andy, friendly amendment?
Yeah, I would have an amendment, and it would be an amendment to Section B, number 8. And Angie, you'll probably want to wordsmith this a little better than I'm going to, but I think if we were to just stated something as a condition of the city granting a permit, the permittee and operator shall be required, subject to availability, to replace a portion of the fireworks to be used in the display with lower non-perchlorate fireworks in accordance with the following schedule. But what I would like to see in there would at least be some sort of documentation or demonstration by the applicant that they were unable, like, you know, a list of 3 distributors they talked to, for example, that said, no, these just aren't available. Because I don't want to leave the door completely open and just every year go, well, we can't get them. You know, it's like I would like to have them be able to demonstrate that, I guess. So.
Okay. Is there a second to that friendly amendment to Section B-8.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Oh, sorry, Ryan.
I think that was seconded by Councilor Hennon. Further comments on the friendly amendment? Angie, do you have what you need to do your magic? I'm seeing
Yep,
it.
I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. Michelle, roll call, please, on the friendly amendment only.
Counselor Sweeney,
In favor.
Counselor Davis,
In favor.
Counselor Hennon,
Aye.
Counselor Fury,
In favor.
and Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
And the friendly amendment passes unanimously. Additional amendments before we vote on the original motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we remove July 5th as a permissible day to shoot off fireworks. We've never had it in the past. We've always restricted these to the July 4th and 5th, 3rd and 4th. I see no reason, given the concerns expressed by the public, that we should expand those rights to, or expand the use of those fireworks to the 5th of July.
Second.
Is there a second to the friendly amendment? I did hear Rebecca Norton seconding the friendly amendment, which will be amendment number 2, deleting July 5th as a permitted day to shoot off fireworks within the city. Comments from the council?
It looks like Dana has a question.
I just want to provide clarification. So all that is doing is adding between 10 p.m. and midnight on 4th of July, really. If you read it, it's 12 a.m. on July 5th. So I think really when you read that, it was just adding between the hours of 10 p.m. on July 4th and 12 a.m. You could change it to say 11:59 p.m. I think that was the change that was discussed. So just to clarify, we weren't adding the full day of July 5th. It was just the first minute of July 5th.
Okay. I hear that, and just for clarification purposes, I would like it to read 11:59, 59 if we want, on July 4th. That'd be the cutoff date. I just think it's important that the public not read or misread it.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Is that okay with the second, Ryan?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Thank you, Frank. We will vote on the friendly amendment, which will be the second amendment this evening. Michelle, roll call, please.
Counselor Sweeney,
In favor.
Counselor Davis,
In favor.
Counselor Hennon,
In favor.
Counselor Fury,
In favor.
and Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
And the friendly amendment passes unanimously. Further amendments before we vote on the original motion as amended? Michelle, roll call, please.
Counselor Sweeney,
In favor.
Counselor Davis,
In favor.
Counselor Hennon,
In favor.
Counselor Fury,
In favor.
Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Angie. We'll move on to item 7 of our agenda, which is communications from our Public Works Director. We have item 7A, which is discussion and review on the recommendations for the future recycling services. And I'll just remind the council, we do have Chad, Scott, and John here representing 3 bidders to the RFP on the phone this evening, in case there's any questions for those individuals. Craig.
Okay, good evening again, Mayor and Council. In May of 2004, the city made a major change in our solid waste program when we discontinued collection services by the Public Works Department and began contracting with North Valley Refuse. Although North Valley Refuse has been acquired by Republic Services, they have been the sole provider of the city's solid waste and recycling services since 2004. The recently executed contract with North Valley does not include recycling services. However, Council has expressed quite a bit of interest in continuing to provide these services, so we're working now on an effort to develop a plan on how to move forward doing so. The city currently has a centralized recycling site located at the corner of Columbia Avenue and Railway Street. The property where the site is located is being repurposed, and the city is considering the creation of a new centralized site. The new location is proposed on Monaghan Road between Vorman and JP, kind of just south of the Parks Maintenance Facility. At the December 7th, 2020 council work session, staff did present an RFP to council to solicit interest in managing this new central site, and a variety of topics were discussed. Site location, materials collected, general requirements for the RFP, funding, hours of operation, curbside collection, and climate action goals. And based on the feedback from council, it was determined the RFP should also allow contractors to provide pricing on curbside collection as an alternative to the management of a central site. So with that, the original RFP was pretty much discarded, and it was turned into an invitation to bid, where additional detail and specification was added to the invitation, and this would allow us to determine the most cost-effective way to continue to provide recycling services to the community. The invitation was authorized by council for advertisement back in January of this year. And the invitation described bids that will be accepted or were accepted for two separate and distinct services. Both services will require the acceptance of flattened cardboard, paperboard, aluminum, tin, steel, newspaper, magazines, office paper, catalogs, and junk mail. In addition, contractors were required to include alternate prices to accept number 1 and 2 plastics. So for option 1, the contractors were responsible for working with the city to design a new centralized facility. And then once construction was completed by the city, the contractor would then take over management of the site for 3 years, intended to begin later this year or in early fiscal year 22. For option 2, the contractor will be responsible for biweekly collection, transport, and disposal of single-stream recyclable residential solid waste. This work will also take place for 3 years, beginning in fiscal year 22. And the contractor will be responsible for furnishing all the vehicles, employees, and containers to provide the service to all of the residential units within the city. So the bids were due on March 5th of this year, last month, and responses were received from 3 contractors: North Valley Refuse, who's doing business as Republic Services, Evergreen Disposal, and Helena Recycling. Copies of the bids are enclosed with the packet, along with a summary of all of the pricing that was received. The low bidder for the design and management of the central recycling site was Evergreen Disposal. They had a first-year cost of $8,250 per month, which equates to $99,000 per year. It's important to note that the construction of the facility is not included in that cost, and I'm currently estimating that work at about $185,000. The proposed funding mechanism for this option would be a dedicated property tax mill levy, and the first year would necessitate approximately 6.83 mills to support the cost of service and construction. So based on that, a home valued at $400,000 would see an increase of about $37, and a commercial business with a market value of $3.8 million would see an annual increase of about $494 on their fiscal year 22 tax bill. For subsequent years after the construction of the site is completed, those numbers would decrease to roughly $15 a month for residential property owners and $190 a month for commercial business owners. This, of course, assumes that operating costs remain minimal for the city. The low bidder for the curbside recycling option was Republic, with a first-year cost of $6.25 a month for each stop, which equates to $75 per year for each residence. Using an estimated 3,500 customers, this comes out to a total first-year cost of $262,500. It should be noted that this cost does not include the city billing for these recycling services. The bid assumed that the contractor would invoice the city on a monthly basis, so we'd have to likely add some administrative costs to that $625 to bill individually. It's also interesting to note that all of the bidders for all of the options included plastics in their base bid. We bid that as an alternate, but all of the bidders indicated that the plastics recycling was included in their base bid. We also heard earlier from John Hilton from Helena Recycling. They had a slightly different approach. They did not include a separate cost for the management of the central site in their curbside recycling quote, but their quote did, as they described, include the construction of a recycling center, which would be available. So what their proposal was that the facility would be built at the expense of Helena Recycling in exchange for a 2.5 acre kind of zero cost lease from the city. So they would be essentially building that recycling site on the location where we're proposing the central site. Although we'd have a requirement for all of the residential customers to pay for curbside recycling, this site would give an opportunity for public not wishing to use the service to drop off their recycling, and would also allow for commercial recycling. So there are several factors I think we need to consider when deciding on how to move forward beyond just cost. So in your packet, there's kind of a pros and cons for each. I'll go through sort of the highlights of those. For the central recycling site, there is a lower annual cost after the first year. So after the site is constructed and built, or designed and built, the annual costs going forward are considerably less for the central site. That site would be available to Whitefish residents and businesses. And it could also be used for future zero waste events at Depot Park. We had talked about sort of dedicating a small, perhaps shed of some sort at the central recycling site for containers that would be used at zero waste event sites. And then, of course, the recycling could go to the central recycling site. In terms of the negatives for the central site, of course, there is a considerable cost for construction. There's a lower probability of use rather than the downtown location. It's not quite as convenient. There's a higher probability of contamination. We know that there's quite a bit of material that goes into the recycling bins at the central site that doesn't necessarily match the signage. Folks love to just drop junk off there, and we're forced to pick it up. It requires daily opening and closing by the city staff, so this new site would be gated, but it would be open and closed every day, so there's some city staff requirements there. We think it will likely require a future site attendant if we're going to continue to run a central recycling facility. All of the green box sites throughout the county do have a full-time attendant, and that's likely a direction we'd have to go. And then, of course, out-of-city residents and businesses who use the site would not be paying for the service. So I guess when we talk, I don't have to go through all of the benefits of curbside recycling, but it just basically kind of flips the pros and the cons. We feel that not having to construct a site or manage new infrastructure is definitely a benefit. I think we can increase the probability of capturing recycling if it's done at the curbside. It would obviously streamline operation. It is a more expensive option. There's obviously some animal attractant issues that we'd have to deal with for recycling being left outside. That's no different than our garbage collection. But anyway, just moving on to the climate action goals. I did want to mention that strategy 3.1 of the consumer waste section of the climate action plan is to implement a single stream curbside recycling program. So we have discussed this in the past. There has been interest on the part of the council to move forward in this direction. And so we do need to bear that in mind when making a decision on how to move forward. Diverting more waste from the landfill is one of the most direct strategies Whitefish can pursue to reduce the environmental impacts of the city's consumption. The current residential program of a single centralized site does suffer from overuse. There's excess cardboard and garbage and other random junk that routinely gets left at the site. So the curbside program would help to minimize or actually get rid of that. Implementing a committed and thoughtful single stream curbside recycling program can have substantial positive impacts on community waste diversion and reducing contamination issues associated with multi-stream recycling. So based on the recent bid prices and the pros and cons that I've gone through, the guidance provided in the climate action plan, it is my recommendation that we move forward with a contract with Republic on a mandatory curbside collection program. We realize that creating this program will be a new endeavor for the city, and it's going to take considerable planning in order to ensure its success. However, I do believe that the benefits of curbside collection are worth the additional costs as well as the time and effort to establish the program. If it's the desire of council to move forward in this direction, you could either make a motion that directs staff to draft an ordinance and proceed with a public hearing, or perhaps the first step would really just be to move forward with that public hearing to gauge community interest. So kind of leave it up to you guys, but at this point, I do think that the curbside collection program is going to be the most beneficial way to move forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks very much, Craig, for the thorough staff report and those that also responded to the RFP. Much appreciated. We'll start with Frank. Councilor Sweeney, any questions or comments for Craig?
Yeah, Craig, I compliment you on your staff report. Very helpful. My question is, am I looking at Helena Recycling saying that for $13.49 per household or they would provide both curbside recycling and a central site and manage it?
That's correct. Yeah, Helena's proposal was to, at their own expense, to build a central recycling site, essentially. Beyond that, that would be their processing facility. So they would actually be collecting materials there, baling the materials there, and then exporting them to the final recycling destination. Of course, that comes with a zero cost lease. We'd be essentially giving them the land to operate that site or that facility. But it was their proposal that $13.49 per stop would cover the recycling facility as well.
Okay, and on the other bids, there's a fixed dollar amount that's associated with either the central site, and when that was bid or when they responded to the bid, was it, okay, if we just do the central site, it's going to be $87,000, what is it? $87,000 per year?
Yeah, so the low bid for the central recycling site was, at least for the first year cost, was Evergreen. And they were $82.50 a month, so just shy of $100,000 a year. It was basically $99,000 a year. That is just to manage the central site. That would not include curbside collection. So the way that the invitation was drafted was that essentially the city would be selecting one option or the other. Helena Recycling, I think, did, some soul searching on this and really determined that, in order to bring their business here, they would need that recycling facility. And so, of course, the curbside number is higher, but yeah, you're essentially getting both, services, for that dollar amount.
Is there a way, are we restricted in some form or fashion from, in effect, using taxpayer or property supported funds or mills, whatever you want to call it, to, in effect, subsidize either or both curbside or central recycling?
Well, that's a tricky one. I understand what you're asking. You know, I think that the curbside collection wouldn't be a mill levy. It would essentially be a new, correct me if I'm wrong, Dana, but a new enterprise fund or an additional, use charge that we would be billing to individual property owners. So it wouldn't be done through a general tax levy. It would be done through a new enterprise. So it wouldn't necessarily, going with Helena Recycling, I don't think would be taking tax dollars per se to subsidize a recycling facility for a private owner.
No. What I'm suggesting is that there is a cost to the taxpayers if we just simply have a central recycling site. You're saying we're going to need to add 6 mills or whatever it is to the tax bill.
Right.
And what I'm suggesting is whether it's a fee, a compulsory fee, or a mill, the property owner is still got to pay it. So if it looks like a tax, acts like a tax, probably going to be perceived as a tax. So I'm trying to understand where we're going here in terms of what the real economics are to the community and the actual cost to the individual on an all-in basis. And because having a central site as well as curbside pickup, there's some additional value to be had there that the city would otherwise have to subsidize through a mill levy charge. And so does that in effect, do you see where I'm going with this thing? There's a trade to be had there in terms of, are we taxing here or are we simply going with fees? And I see what you're saying is if we just have curbside, we don't have to worry about a tax levy and we don't have to worry about anything other than the straight fee. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And Frank, on Helena Recycling, I haven't really read through that bid because I was confused at what it was, just looking at it, in the staff report. I don't know, how we would want to address, basically that ends up being a long-term lease of our property. Whereas, we were going to improve our property, basically allow the bins of, a contractor to be placed there. If this is going to be more of a processing site, I think we got to think about that from a lease perspective. And I think that would just involve a bit more because I'm assuming that they, included the value of that land lease as part of it, which I think it changes that bid quite a bit from the other two. I would say that, either way, you could even do the central site as a fee. There, we don't have to put it on the property taxes. The reason we do is that ends up hitting, all businesses and property owners because they could use it whenever they want. The fee, we right now bill garbage, water, sewer together. We could add it as a recycling fee for the central site, but we don't have, not everybody gets a water bill or a sewer bill. We've had to add some with just garbage. We could do that. It's just a little bit more staff intensive and would cost a bit more than a tax levy.
Thank you. I didn't mean to belabor it, but that was confusing to me. Thank you.
Anything further, Frank?
No other questions.
Thank you. Councilor Fury.
I probably do, but not right now.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Councilor Norton.
Yeah, I appreciate, we have history with 2 of them, and then the other one is a nice idea. I personally would like it if we still had a central site where people could drop off large amounts of cardboard or newspaper, things like that. I don't think maybe curbside would make up for that, but I would like to have a central site and curbside I still don't know about mandatory recycling. We have so many short-term rentals and we have a lot of visitors, and it's kind of like we already have garbage problems with people leaving things out when they're not supposed to. So I think for sure, one, it would work for sure if people could sign up and pay extra for that. I just kind of keep thinking about how messy it got over at our recycling center and how that could happen in neighborhoods if people weren't thoughtful. So I don't know. I wish it was apples and apples and oranges to look at the true cost of it. I don't know if that's possible to ask for a little more time to cost it out. If it's only a 3-year contract, but we're allowing someone to use that land, for a long-term relationship, that's a big investment out there. And the investment wouldn't be something that we as a city built. We would lease it to a company to do that. So I don't know. I mean, it's confusing to me. It's all good, but it's confusing, like which way to go right now for me. So thanks.
Thanks, Rebecca. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, my first question was going to be almost exactly what Rebecca just brought up. I know I'm having some concern about the holes that exist if we go strictly to a curbside setup. And the 3 examples that came up were commercial customers. I think about all the boxes and, bars and stuff and all the cans, and also short-term rentals seem to probably do a lot of drop-off, and then some of the longer-term goals around zero-term or zero waste events and stuff like that. So I wanted to ask Craig if it is even theoretically possible here that we could do some sort of a smaller drop-off facility. I mean, I know presumably if we did a central drop-off, it would be get a lot less traffic than what it would today, because we would also have the curbside. So is there some option where we could do like a much smaller central facility, like something that's analogous to what we have now in the snow lot, if not smaller, and then try to roll the pickup cost of that into this contract, and hopefully that wouldn't be much?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think anything's possible. The issue is that, going with the curbside collection, the intention was to eliminate the large capital cost to construct a central site. So now we're going to basically be doing both. So we're talking about a mill levy, to construct a new central site, and then a mandatory curbside for the collection. I think anything's possible, through negotiation. And I don't know if it's an interesting scenario here, because we had, the low bidder for, the central site was different than the low bidder for the curbside. So the way that it was currently bid, we can't really, subsidize central site costs from the curbside collection cost, because both contractors are going to be required to do work. So I think that gets a little bit tricky. I guess in terms of your, the areas that you think we may be missing, all of the short-term rental properties would be included in this. I mean, those are residential properties that would have a container, and, of course, it would be up to the property management companies to, dictate how their, clients are using that. But, we could easily provide educational material that, landlords could provide to their tenants. But all of the short-term rental facilities should be included in the curbside collection. Commercial properties would still, be able to pay for services. In fact, I think that's what the vast majority of the commercial businesses that currently recycle are doing it that way. They're paying somebody to collect their recyclable materials. I don't think that the central site is currently being overrun with commercial businesses. In fact, I think it's pretty few and far between, especially the bars and restaurants and, larger generators of recyclable waste. I really don't think they're, sending, a bar back or something out to the central site every day. And then you had a third, which I forgot now because I've been talking.
That was the zero waste.
The zero waste. Yeah. So I don't think this eliminates, I don't think the curbside in any way eliminates the ability to capture or create, zero waste events. I think, on a regular, weekly basis, we would just have the contractor, pick up, and maybe we'd house that at the Public Works facility or at the Parks facility. We could have a few bins or whatever bins they're using at the zero waste, we just transport or have the event organizer bring up to the shop or to the park shop, and that's where it would get collected. So I didn't put the zero waste in there as a, I guess I had it as a con or a negative for the curbside, but really I think it just requires us to get a little more creative on how we manage it.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, especially about commercial. That does make me feel a little better. My second question was I was wondering if you could address the concerns about where the recycling's going. I didn't see a lot of details in the RFPs, the bid forms, and maybe that's something we deal with later, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, it would be required as part of the contract that the materials are going to an approved MRF or materials recycling facility. The bid forms did require that. This came up during the drafting of the RFP, and I can't remember if it was Mary or in-house that we added that, but the bid forms did specify where these contractors were intending to take it, but the bid itself does have a clause on requirement for where the material would go.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilor Hannan.
No questions right now, maybe later.
Okay. I guess I'll chime in here since I haven't really spoken to this issue this evening. You know what? When I grew up, we probably had mandatory curbside recycling 35 years ago. And when I have friends visit and family and they come out here and here we are situated in the Northern Rockies in the crown of the continent, and we pride ourselves on being responsible stewards of our natural resources. It's integrated into our marketing and branding as a community. It's why we attract the geotourist, the traveler that respects our sense of place and our commitment to being responsible stewards of the land and water. I think it's an absolute no-brainer that it's time to at least advance Craig's recommendation to a public hearing and have a draft ordinance prepared for mandatory curbside recycling. I'll speak just briefly to my impression of how the centralized areas worked, and this is certainly not a reflection on Republic by any means. I was down there this weekend, and we've heard this countless times, and it's just pretty much a disaster. It was used again this weekend as a dump. I like the curbside option because I would like to avoid a $200,000 capital expense to develop a centralized site, and I would like to avoid, dinging our residents with the property tax mill levy increase. Dana alluded to the fact that over time it's going to require additional personnel time just to open and close the facility, and that's, at a certain time, that there's going to probably require an attendant be hired to manage the facility, full time, which is going to be another added cost for our residents to pick up. In addition, just going solely with a centralized site certainly encourages less use, in my opinion, compared to a curbside recycling system. So, the other thing I think about is, we have limited land as a city to provide for other better and higher uses. And when I think of 2.5 acres being encumbered by a centralized collection facility, when we are dealing with problems with affordable housing, 2.5 acres has the potential to provide a lot of housing if that's the direction we want to go with this property. And I'd hate to see it encumbered for a centralized site. So I strongly encourage the council, and I agree with Craig's recommendation that we select Curbside as the preferred option. And I see no harm if it's the council's wish to advance this to a public hearing where we can have a draft ordinance and simply request public input and comment on this plan. It doesn't mean we have to move forward, but at least we have the opportunity to gauge citizen input into this process. And I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Mayor, I would clearly endorse that approach. I think at this point, at least I am in favor of curbside recycling. I think it would be a great thing for us to move this thing forward, and that probably is, again, to gauge the community's commitment. I think it would be great to have a public hearing on it. So I think that's the way I would like to proceed.
Well, can I entertain a motion from you, Frank?
I would move that we ask staff to prepare an ordinance requiring mandatory curbside recycling for consideration in the near future.
Thank you, Frank. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Oh, go ahead.
That was seconded by Councilor Davis. Frank, would you like to speak to your motion?
I guess I would. I like you, John. It's time for us to just deal with the problem. And the problem is to get more people to recycle, we need to make it more convenient. And the way we do that is provide curbside recycling. I think if we make it mandatory, it becomes affordable for the community as well. And I think it'll be more efficient for the community as well. And there are still central recycling sites down at the landfill, as well as other places if people prefer to use that or don't have access to the to curbside recycling. But I think we need to make that available and make that part of our culture. It's just time to do it.
Thank you, Frank. Before we take a vote on the motion, are there further comments from the council? Andy?
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments, I guess. I think we've stated, and I think Craig was the one that first stated, is, not having recycling in this community is not an option. And while there's people that are not going to want mandatory, not having any is not going to fly. And I was at the recycling site today and looked at how people just really can't read those signs for some reason, or either that or they're unable to differentiate between materials. I'm not quite sure how that works, and I think we've seen the central recycling site's a disaster, and I think just creating another one of those, we create another ginormous mess. I think that's what we're going to get. And Frank was right on the money, and I understand Ben's concern and Rebecca about some larger materials. But if I think of people at construction sites or those kind of places, you can go to the county site south of town, or you can go over to Columbia Falls. There are options for hauling large volumes of material. That can be done, and there's no charge for that. You can take it down to Pacific. There's a lot of options to go ahead and do that. And I think at the other end of the day is because we know we have to have recycling. There's a strong enough demand for it in our community. If we go with the central site, we're going to pay for that too, whether we pay Republic $6.70 a month or however we do that. At some point, people are going to be paying $5 or $6 a month for recycling in this community. And if we have a central recycling site, and I really do think it's right on the money also in Craig's report, is those of us that are taxpayers are going to be subsidizing those people that live outside the city. And, because they bring their stuff in, I watch them do it all the time. And, and I don't mind doing that because it's the right thing to do. So, yeah, I definitely support the amendment or the motion. And we'll, have a public hearing and see what kind of support we get. So.
Thank you, Eddie. Further comments from the council? Michelle, roll call, please.
Counselor Sweeney,
In favor.
Counselor Davis,
In favor.
Counselor Hennon,
Aye.
Counselor Fury,
In favor.
and Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
And that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks again, Craig, and again to the respondents to our RFP, and thanks for joining us this evening and sharing your experience with the council. I think we're just going to keep pushing through. It's 8:50 unless someone needs a 5-minute break. Keep pushing? Okay. We'll move on to item 8A. You have Dana's report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Dana on her staff report? Not seeing it. Go ahead, Frank. Sorry.
Maybe we ought to again take this offline someplace, given how long we've been going. But I do have some questions, some follow-up questions on the legislative sessions and some of the bills that we have been following and she has been following at some point. And so if it's better that we take those offline, I'm happy to do that. And I understand completely, but I still have some questions about that. And I cannot say how helpful it has been that Dana's been able to, among other things, track this stuff and keep us abreast of what's going on.
Thanks, Frank. I'll give you just a couple updates because most of the stuff is still status quo. Legislature didn't meet today. It wasn't considered a legislative day because COVID was present among some of the individuals at the legislature. House Bill 257 is the bill that would eliminate our mask ordinance. That one has made movement even since last week. So right now it's been sent back to the House for confirmation of the amendments that were made at the Senate. I anticipate that going through the House. The amendments were pretty minor in nature, didn't help us at all. I assume that will go through the House, sign, and go to the governor at some point. Usually takes a week or two for that to happen. So our mask mandate that's effective till May 12th may be eliminated sooner than we think. So something to keep in mind as we are still meeting remotely. I think it's okay, but at some point it'll be good for council to make a decision on just a mask policy. However, there is another bill at the legislature that we're tracking that could prohibit a city from trespassing individuals for not wearing a mask in a property tax paid for facility like City Hall. So just know that as we start to look at transitioning into in-person meetings, that masks may be a challenge even from a requirement for individuals at meetings.
Dana, would that bill also impact, for example, the WAVE or the O'Shaughnessy, because those are taxpayer-funded, in effect, facilities, so that they would be operating? Am I reading it correctly when I see that?
So the WAVE, the good news about the WAVE, and I think we could make this argument, the building was actually paid for by donations and community fundraising efforts. We did own the land, but it's not a tax-paid building. So I believe the WAVE can continue to have their requirements. It's fully under their control, as with the ice rink. So I would argue that they're outside of your jurisdictions because you've given them the opportunity to manage those facilities through a lease. I think I think this is really targeted at city halls and probably like our emergency services center. But again, hopefully we'll see what happens with that bill. And it's just on trespassing. It doesn't say you can't, I mean, we can still have the requirement. I just don't know how you remove an individual for trespassing or not following the rules. And maybe there's another way we can look into how we address it, but definitely a concerning bill out there. And House Bill 257. Today, as you guys all know, House Bill 259 was signed by the governor. That's for the inclusionary zoning, or it eliminates our inclusionary zoning through the Legacy Homes program. So that one, I do have a comment here or my own notes, that we need to plan on how to proceed. We do not have any work sessions available for the next coming months with the budget kicking on and board interviews. So I think I would recommend, council probably needs to give some direction to the committee, and how do we look at the Legacy Homes program? Are there amendments that could be made instead of just completely eliminating it? Some of the stuff I'd rather just not talk about till after the legislature's done, because there are some ideas I have, and I worry that they might make a change somewhere, but they also can't introduce bills anymore. So we might be in a safe spot now. But I don't know if that's something the council is interested in doing, trying to schedule a special session. The mayor could call a special session on behalf of the council, I believe, to talk about the impacts of this program or the impacts of this legislation on our program. Thoughts on that?
Dana, does staff have the time, and I'm probably referring to Wendy and Dave in particular, to evaluate what our next steps are? I wouldn't want to call a special session, although I'm certainly inclined to, unless staff has had the opportunity to kind of regroup and figure out what our options actually are.
Yeah, I think it would obviously have to be a few weeks out maybe. The bill's effective immediately. So, I think basically what that means, any new projects right now, we will just not implement that portion of our zoning requirements. So we know that it's going to take time to remove any of those requirements or adjust our program. But, even if we looked at the housing committee meets May 12th, and I'm wondering if maybe by then we could, let me just double check, not May 12th, it's May, no wait, I'm sorry, calendar really bad. Okay, May 13th. And it's a Thursday at 6 p.m. And I'm wondering if we maybe even have a joint meeting with the Housing Steering Committee, but maybe not. Maybe that's something we do beforehand. Either way, it's tough. I think it's going to be brainstorming. We could have our consultants who've helped us before with our plan, maybe look at our program to see if there's amendments that can be made, whether we look at a residency requirement or not. Yeah, I would say like definitely the second week of May is probably a good time to shoot for, unless Angie, you see a need to proceed quicker.
I don't. I think at this point, going forward, we know, we can't enforce our Legacy Homes requirements, but I think we need to move forward probably with the steering committee with some, thoughtful ideas about how to move forward. So I don't think it's something that we should or can rush. At this point, we just can't enforce our ordinance. So it just kind of sits there on the books until we figure out how to move forward.
Okay.
So why don't I circle back with city staff, and then we can come up with kind of a time frame, and then I'll reach out to you, John, and we could always do a doodle poll to figure out council availability.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay. Also, just a note that our remote meetings are scheduled to go through June 19th is when that ordinance would expire. So as we get closer, whether you want to extend or not, let us know. I think all of us want to be back in meetings face-to-face as soon as possible. Just, I think we know that we'll have the spacing of the city hall to keep, some protections in place, as not everybody will have been vaccinated. And, I think you're seeing a slight spike in cases in general, just with travel over the spring break time, people being out more. So our first meeting back in person would be the second meeting in June, I believe. So the 21st would be when we're scheduled to go back. If you want to go back to in-person meetings prior to that, we would have to do an emergency ordinance, I think, repealing that. Or I don't know, Angie, we would have to do something to repeal that ordinance that's in effect. So, last item on my report I just want to touch base on is the building. Our building department, we touched on this actually during the work session, but our building department is more than booming. It is quite absolutely insane. They've had 55 building permit applications that are still moving through the process. Within 3 days, we had 6 more applications. We're seeing a lot of building. And one of the issues that is causing is that we're actually collecting. It's an issue for once. We're collecting a lot of revenue. There are specific state laws in place that require that we only keep 1 year of reserves within that fund. And then you have to reduce your rates. The problem I see with that legislation is that you basically restrict you basically have more people building, so they pay a lower rate. And then when you go and you slow down, you have less people paying and you have to charge them a higher rate. Doesn't make sense. Two legislative sessions ago, maybe even the last one before this year. Susan with Columbia Falls, I know they were trying to get through a 2-year reserves that failed to get through. So one thing I think we need to consider is our staff, they're getting burnt out, to be honest. I think having a person help the front office, manage phone calls, manage building permits, and a lot of the data entry would be super helpful. It is the one position that I'm confident I would like to propose to council for this next fiscal year. One that I see us being able to fund at least for 2 or 3 years, and the need, I believe, will still be there. If building slows down, there's, I think, ways that this position can transition to also help planning some as well. So I would say that most departments, are facing challenges with staffing because as you grow, your staff has to grow, and we don't grow super fast on the staffing. When you listen to police, fire, we're trying to make steps toward that, but it can be hard because there's the financial impacts as well. So what I'm asking this evening is if, and technically I could within the budget right now hire somebody from LC staffing as a temp worker. The problem is it takes a lot of training up front to get a person on. We also pay a higher rate with LC staffing. And if we ever do want to hire the person, then we have to pay this like super large fee to bring them on full time. So I would actually like to hire this position now. It's a normal coming to you before the budget process. And usually we can, if we have an issue, we can hire July 1, but we're already hitting the busy season. It's only going to get worse as summer proceeds. So just thoughts on hiring a new administrative position for the building department. We have Dabney who's in there already. We basically see this as being a duplicate of Dabney being able to help with all the scheduling for contractors.
That would be entirely funded by building permit fee revenues, et cetera, not tax supported funds?
Correct, 100%. There would be no property tax increase to individuals. Obviously, building department has been hesitant to hire new people because they were the one department that experienced almost, most of the layoffs in 2008, 2009. They don't like hiring people because they all went through that. But for them to come forward and say, you know what, we actually need it. This person will know they're on the low end of the totem pole. I think we could put it as a contract for 3 years, but in reality, I think that's something we could just, mention in the job description that, based on demand, we could guarantee it for 3 years, but, I think it's just the nature of the job that if we don't have that, we have to face the layoff. And I definitely have had more requests for positions than we're including in the budget. And maybe 3 years down the road when building slows, there's going to be another place to have this person go through attrition or new positions. So, but yes, no cost to taxpayers.
I'm totally comfortable with that if that's what they need, given the volume of applications they're processing. We need to do what we can to make their job and the function of the planning and building office friendly to the customers and also manageable for the employees that work in the department. Thoughts from the council? I think Dana's looking for some direction in advance of the budget meetings.
I think it's a lot to ask for the building department to do everything they do when the volume is literally multiples of what it was. I know I work with those folks quite a bit. They're fantastic, and I know they're working really hard, and they probably are burnt out just like a lot of the folks in that industry. I think if we can get them help, I think we should. And, listen, the cyclical nature of employment is something that affects a lot of industries, not just the building department. It's everybody's like that. So I would be in favor of getting them some help.
Showing of hands.
Awesome.
There you have it.
Thank you very much, John. And I know that the building department will be very happy and appreciative. So with that, that is all I have on my report tonight.
Thanks, Dana, very much. We'll move on to item 9, communications from the council and myself. We'll start with our standing COVID-19 item 9A of the agenda. Any comments this evening? I do have one that Kevin Gartland submitted because he couldn't log on earlier. He indicated that the chamber board met today and voted to encourage the council to lift the mask mandate immediately, and if not immediately, certainly on May 13th when it's scheduled to expire. I'll just share that as public comment on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce this evening. Any comments from the council on standing COVID-19 item? Rebecca?
Yeah, the pandemic's not over. We want it to be over, but I was thinking about this because we're going to be getting a lot of pressure and maybe some legal challenges to it, but masks do work. And I think we should be following the federal guidelines, actually, because I think within Montana, the whole thing has been politicized. We're still in an election cycle for 2022. And so I think a lot of the rhetoric is reflecting that. But, you know, I've had long COVID now for over a year, so I read about it at least an hour a day. And it's a very serious disease. We made really good progress. Likely we will not be masking in the schools in the fall, is what the school people are saying. But we're going to be getting record numbers of visitors here too. So I think everybody wants us not to mask, but I think given our volumes, we should actually look at reflecting more of the federal approach to protecting our citizens and the visitors. So it shocks me that people base decisions on their finances instead of the health of people that they live in community with, but that is where we're at. So Senator Tester did say that we've got 25% of Montanans vaccinated. Just yesterday, I think that came out. But it's a serious disease, and even though many people have had it, I'm starting to see people every day that had it, got reinfected months later, and still have some long haul issues. So, you know, but I think we've done okay. I just think we're gonna be really impacted by a lot of visitors too. So I would use a lot of caution in opening up. I don't know if we have a lot of legal recourse to do that, but anybody that's listening, I think you should protect your health and not listen to people that don't base decisions on science.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further comments from the council on this standing item?
Mr. Mayor, I would not, at this time, I think the proper position for us to move forward would be for us to leave the emergency mask ordinance in place. Hope it doesn't get removed from us by the governor in the next couple of weeks. But I think we could reevaluate whether or not we needed to or thought we needed to move another emergency ordinance at that time, depending upon what the numbers are showing. I think we're going to have a hard time convincing the public that that they need to stay masked. But I would entertain it at that time. I don't think we ought to drop our requirements at this point, that masking. And quite frankly, I've been encouraged by our community. Everybody, when I've been out, people are continuing to mask in restaurants and places like that as they go in and out. I know that's not true in Kalispell, but I'm encouraged by the fact that people are, at least in this community, seem to be taking it to heart and understand that we're probably still doing the right thing.
Further comments? Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're out of the woods on this yet, but I would say that there is a lot of encouraging things happening right now. I mean, I know the pace of vaccinations has picked up considerably. It seems like things are changing really quickly out there, and I think that's really fantastic. I agree with Frank. I think that the fate of the mask ordinance is going to be a discussion item next month, no matter what. And it may be moot, quite frankly, if the governor, or if this bill gets passed before then anyway. So, things are changing so quickly. Maybe we pick up the issue in May at the expiration of the existing ordinance. My own opinion is when everybody that wants to get vaccinated has a chance to get vaccinated, fully vaccinated, there's a strong argument to be made that maybe that ordinance isn't needed anymore. But I think in any event, that's not today and that's not next week. So I think we should give it a few weeks and see. The other comment I would make is I think personally, I would feel comfortable going back to in-person meetings for city council sometime pretty soon. I don't know what other folks think, but I would be up for that whenever other folks wanted to. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that same sentiment, and I think we need to start having at least a discussion on when we can return to normal business here at City Hall. I don't like the prospect of holding remote meetings for another, what would it be, 3 months through the middle of June, or 2 months, whatever that is. So Dana, I've given this some thought, and just so we're not making that type of decision, whimsically, I mean, are there criteria that we could use, or perhaps consult with Joe Russell and the health department as to, perhaps some triggers or criteria that we could use that, indicates to us that, it's time to go back to regular in-person meetings?
So I can talk to Joe Russell. They're meeting in person with masks. So I think the health board's already meeting in person. I get poked tomorrow with my second one. So I'll just, I would say there's still some directors and staff that haven't gotten their second shot to make them fully vaccinated.
Sure.
So I think I would like us to see maybe at least through May, because I think that gives enough time for those that maybe just became eligible April 1st to, get through that backlog. I think though, by the end of May, you're going to see that most people have been able to get their first or second shot, if they so chose to do so. And, not everybody's going to vaccinate. It's kind of disappointing to hear, Joe Russell say like, 40% is what we're shooting for this county. And maybe that's the case, but I would say city staff wise, I think you're at a higher percentage, at least at City Hall, comparatively in our emergency personnel. So, I think if we could, I can talk to Joe, but maybe we touch base again on May 3rd. And then if we have to do, Angie, let me know, what do we have to do? Why my brain's not working right now, or whatever, it's 9 o'clock. My brain went to bed. What do we have to do to repeal an ordinance that would still be in effect?
I think we just do another ordinance repealing it. That's interesting. I am take a look at it though. Get you a definitive answer.
So then maybe we would have something on like May 17th to where we meet in person again, June 1st, which is our first budget work session actually. Those are better in person, I can tell you that from past experience. It's just an easier setting. But yeah, so let me do some more research and report back on May 3rd.
Okay, that's great. Any other comments or thoughts from the council? Okay, not seeing any. We'll start with councilor comments. And Frank, any comments to close tonight?
Nothing further this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Frank. Councilor Fury.
Given the hour, not too much, but I do really want to just recognize the passing of a truly great citizen of this community, and that's Connie Heckathorn.
Yep.
There's probably very few people that have spent more volunteer hours for any number of things in this community than Connie did, and she always did it with a smile on her face and Although she would give you a hard time if you weren't doing the right thing too. So I have to say that. But she served as a substitute judge for the city. She was instrumental in what we know as the library today, and the volunteer program was large part due to her hard work and the building and all of that kind of thing. And I know we lost her husband, Jake, here recently too. And so both of them were great citizens of this community. And I just would like to reach out to her family, particularly her daughter, Marty, and say we will miss her. And we are all very thankful that she spent all of the time and the hours she did serving our community.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate that. Councilor Norton.
I'm sorry, I think I just lost video, but nope, I just feel like there's more hopefulness in our town now that things are moving forward with the pandemic. Spring is really here, and I appreciate all of you so much with your hard work to get us through what just happened. So thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Rebecca. Councilor Davis.
No further comments at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. And finally, Councilor Hennon.
I'll just say thanks, Dana, for all the legislative updates. They're very helpful, even though the bills never seem to go our way. But that must be all the small government I keep hearing about. Anyway, that's all I have.
Thanks, Ryan. I have nothing further this evening. Dana, anything further from staff?
Not tonight.
All right. Thanks for all your hard work, as well as the directors and staff. On that note, we are adjourned. Thank you. Good night, everyone.